The Prothean beacon downloaded its knowledge into a commander shepard on Eden Prime, causing confusing dreams and visions. While the imagery is becoming clearer with time, the meaning of the beacon communication remains elusive. It has been suggested that Prothean data recording is highly dependent on a certain point of view, what Carl Jung described as the collective unconscious. The cipher needed to comprehend the images implanted in Shepard's mind is the cultural knowledge of a Prothean, the archetypes, biological instincts, and common experiences universal to the race. Since the Protheans have been dead for millennia, it may be impossible to acquire this cipher. Despite all the evidence confirming the existence of the Protheans, little is known about their culture and society. From time to time, dig sites will yield new clues, but after 50,000 years of decay, very little of value is unearthed. Recent research has focused on the discovery of Prothean data disks. On their own, they are frail and rarely found in one piece. Occasionally, however, an intact disk will be discovered within a console or reading device. To date, over 3 dozen disks have been recovered, and a few of those have been restored to the point where researchers can begin analysing them. Though it may be some time before scientists discover a way to transfer the data off the disks, they are currently considered the most tangible leads for learning more about the Prothean culture. Armatures are quadruped, all-terrain heavy weapons platforms akin to the armoured fighting vehicles of other races. Geth being synthetic intelligences, armatures are not crewed vehicles, but intelligent entities, capable of independent decision-making and learning. Armatures are equipped with heavy kinetic barriers. Their main cannon, mounted on the articulated head turret, appears to be a highly efficient conventional mass accelerator. It is capable of firing in anti-personnel and anti-tank modes. Some armatures carry drones into battle, presumably for reconnaissance purposes. Others host a swarm of insect-sized repair microbots. The Geth models, collectively dubbed Hoppers by Alliance forces, are electronic warfare platforms. They can project electromagnetic radiation across a broad spectrum as an offensive weapon. They can also perform cyber warfare attacks against the onboard computers of body armour hardsuits and weapons, adversely affecting their performance. The structure of Hoppers consists of an advanced and highly elastic artificial muscle material. This allows a Hopper to compress its entire body for powerful leaps. Hoppers also have thousands of molecule-scale barbs on the surfaces of their hands and feet, which are used to cling to walls and ceilings. Hoppers are very difficult targets, leaping from one surface to another in rapid succession. The Quarians have no record of any Geth models similar to Hoppers. This new morphotype must have been developed over the last 300 years by the Geth themselves. This is troubling proof that the Geth are continuing to move towards technological singularity. Experts in synthetic life are intrigued that Hoppers appear to be even more organic than the baseline Geth. The identified subtypes of Hopper have been codenamed Sapper, Stalker, and Ghost. Because of their long lifespan, Atari tend to have a long view, not common in other races. When they encounter a new species or situation, the Asari are more comfortable with an extended period of passive observation and study than immediate action. They are unfazed that some of their investments or decisions may not pay off for decades or centuries. Matriarchs can seem to make incomprehensible decisions, but their insight is evident when their carefully laid plans come to fruition. In interstellar relations, this long view manifests itself in an unspoken policy of centrism. The Asari instinctively seek to maintain stable balances of economic, political, and military power. Traditionally, Asari spread their influence through cultural domination and intellectual superiority. They invite new species of advanced development to join the galactic community, knowing that their ideals and beliefs will inevitably influence their existing culture. Before they joined the Citadel Council, the Salarians' most potent military tool was a small reconnaissance team known as the League of One. Their primary training was in espionage and assassination. Never more than a dozen strong, the team was adept at infiltrating the tightest defences and eliminating all necessary obstacles. Only a few top members of government and military were privy to the League's identities. League members wore no distinguishing garments and held no particular rank. The only evidence of their participation in the League was a small medallion presented to each member upon induction. Their secrecy was maintained until the formation of the Council. In an effort to dispel rumours and appease their new Asari partners, the Salarian Union released all classified documents pertaining to the League. The League of One was suddenly exposed and in danger of being hunted by enemies of the Salarians. Before any harm could be done, the team mysteriously disappeared. Most assume this was a convenient lie to help hide their identities, but a few months later, the inner cabinet was murdered. Though there was no incriminating evidence, it was clear who was responsible. Realising the threat posed by this rogue outfit, the Special Tasks Group dispatched a team of hunters. When they didn't return, the STG dispatched 10 of its brightest operatives, with broad discretionary powers. Only 2 returned. They reported no evidence of the League. No further incidents were reported, and it was assumed the League was wiped out. Some recently declassified documents, however, have suggested there may have been a 13th member who eluded the Salarian military. While Turians are individuals with personal desires, their instinct is to equate the self with the group and set aside personal desires for the good of all. Turians are taught to have a strong sense of personal accountability, the Turian honour that other races find so remarkable. Turians are taught to own every decision they make, good or ill. The worst sin they can make in the eyes of their people is to lie about their own actions. Turians who murder will try to get away with it, but if directly questioned, most will confess to the crime. Turians have a strong inclination towards public service and self-sacrifice, so they tend to be poor entrepreneurs. To compensate, they accept the mercantile Volus as a client race, offering protection in exchange for their fiscal expertise. The Turian military is the centre of their society. It is not just an armed force, it is an all-encompassing public works organisation. The military police are also the civic police. The fire brigades serve the civilian population as well as military facilities, and the Corps of Engineers builds and maintains spaceports, schools, water purification plants, and power stations. The Merchant Marine ensures that all worlds get needed resources. Although they lack the brutality of the Krogan, the skill of the Asari, and the virtuosity of the humans, the Turian military has formidable discipline. Officers and NCOs are lifers with years of field experience. Enlisted personnel are thoroughly trained and stay calm under fire. Turian units don't break. Even if their entire line collapses, they fall back in order, setting ambushes as they go. A popular saying holds, "You will only see a Turian's back once he's dead." Boot camp begins on the 15th birthday. Soldiers receive a year of training before being assigned to a field unit. Officers train for even longer. Most serve until the age of 30, at which point they become part of the reserves. Even if they do suffer injuries preventing frontline service, most do support work behind the lines. Biotics are uncommon. While admired for their exacting skills, Biotics' motives are not always fully trusted by the common soldier. The Turians prefer to assign their Biotics to specialist teams called cabals. Command and control is decentralised and flexible. Individual squads can call for artillery and air support. They make extensive use of combat drones for light duties and practice combined arms. Infantry operates with armour, supported by overhead gunships. Strategically, they are methodical and patient, and dislike risky operations. Tradition is important. Each legion has a full-time staff of historians who chronicle its battle honours in detail. The oldest have records dating back to the Turian Iron Age. If a legion is destroyed in battle, it is reconstituted rather than replaced. The Turians recruit auxiliary units from conquered or absorbed minor races. Auxiliaries are generally light infantry or armoured cavalry units that screen and support the main Turian formations. At the conclusion of their service in the auxiliaries, recruits are granted Turian citizenship. At about the time the Salarians and the Asari were forming the Council, the Turians were embroiled in a bitter civil war. The Unification War, as it was later named, began with hostilities between the colonies furthest from the Turian homeworld, Palaven. These colonies were run by local chieftains, many of whom had distanced themselves from the hierarchy. Without the galvanising influence of the government, the colonies became increasingly isolated and xenophobic. Colonists began wearing emblems or facial markings to differentiate themselves from members of other colonies, and open hostilities became common. When war finally broke out, the hierarchy maintained strict diplomacy and refused to get involved. After several years of fighting, less than a dozen factions remained, and the hierarchy finally intervened. By that time, the chieftains were too weak to resist, and were forced to put an end to fighting and renew their allegiance to the hierarchy. Though peace was restored, it took several decades for animosity between colonists to fade completely. To this day, most Turians still wear the facial markings of their home colonies. As a point of interest, the Turian term barefaced refers to one who is beguiling or not to be trusted. It is also a slang term for politicians. The genophage bioweapon was created to end the Krogan rebellions. From the start, the Krogan had overwhelmed the Council. Only timely first contact with the Turians saved the Council races. The Turians fought the Krogan to a standstill, but sheer weight of Krogan numbers indicated the war could not be won through conventional means. The Turians collaborated with the Salarians to genetically engineer a counter to the rapid breeding of the Krogan. The genophage virus gained the energy to replicate by eating key sequences. Every cell in every Krogan had to be altered for the weapon to be foolproof, otherwise the Krogan could use gene therapy to fix the affected tissues. Once a genophage strain could find no more genes to eat, it would starve and die, limiting spin-off mutation and contamination. This created genetic flaw is hereditary. The Salarians believed the genophage would be used as a deterrent, a position the Turians viewed as naive. Once the project was complete, the Turians mass-produced and deployed it. The Krogan homeworld, their colonies, and all occupied worlds were infected. The resulting mutation made only 1 in 1,000 Krogan pregnancies carry to term. It did not reduce fertility, but offspring viability. The rare females able to carry children to term became prizes the Krogan warlords fought brutal battles over. The Krogan are a shadow of their former glory. While the rebellions took place centuries ago, they are constantly reminded of the horror of the genophage and their inability to counter it. The release of the genophage is still controversial, bitterly debated in many circles. After the Rachni War, the quick-breeding Krogan expanded at the expense of their neighbours. Warlords leveraged their veteran soldiers to seize living space while the Council races were still grateful. Over centuries, the Krogan conquered world after world. There was always just one more needed. When the Council finally demanded withdrawal from the Asari colony of Lusia, Krogan overlord Kredak stormed off the Citadel, daring the Council to take their worlds back. But the Council had taken precautions. The finest STG operators and Asari huntresses had been drafted into a covert observation force, the Office of Special Tactics and Reconnaissance. The Spectres opened the war with crippling strategic strikes. Krogan planets went dark as computer viruses flooded the extranet. Sabotaged antimatter refineries disappeared in blue-white annihilation. Headquarters stations shattered into orbit-clogging debris, ran by pre-placed suicide freighters. Still, this only delayed the inevitable. The war would have been lost if not for the first contact with the Turians, who responded to Krogan threats with a prompt declaration of war. Being on the far side of Krogan space from the Council, the Turians advanced rapidly into the lightly defended Krogan rear areas. The Krogan responded by dropping space stations and asteroids on Turian colonies. 3 worlds were rendered completely uninhabitable. This was precisely the wrong approach to take with the Turians. Each is first and foremost a public servant, willing to risk his life to protect his comrades. Rather than increasing public war weariness, Krogan tactics stiffened Turian resolve. The arrival of Turian task forces saved many worlds from the warlords' marauding fleets, but it took development of the genophage bioweapon to end the war. There were decades of unrest afterwards. Rogue warlords and holdout groups of insurgents refused to surrender or disappeared into the frontier systems to become pirates. The Asari military resembles a collection of tribal warrior bands with no national structure. Each community organises its own unit as the locals see fit and elect a leader to command them. Units from populous cities are large and well equipped, while those from farm villages may be only a few women with small arms. There is no uniform, everyone wears what they like. The Asari military is not an irregular militia, however. Those who serve are full-time professionals. The average Asari huntress is in the maiden stage of her life and has devoted 20 to 30 years studying the martial arts. Asari choose to be warriors at a young age, and their education from that point is dedicated to sharpening the mind and body for that sole purpose. When they retire, they possess an alarming proficiency for killing. Huntresses fight individually or in pairs depending on their tactics preferred in their town. One-on-one, a huntress is practically unbeatable, possessing profound tactical insight, a hunter's eye, and a dancer's grace and alacrity. Biotics are common enough that some capability is a requirement to be trained as a huntress. Lack of biotic talent excludes your young Asari from military service. While fluid and mobile, Asari can't stand up in a firestorm the way a Krogan, Turian or human could. Since their units are small and typically lack heavy armour and support weapons, they are almost incapable of fighting a conventional war, particularly one of a defensive nature. So Asari units typically undertake special operations missions. Like an army of ninja, they are adept at ambush, infiltration, and assassination, demoralizing and defeating their enemies through intense, focused guerrilla strikes. As a popular Turian saying puts it, the Asari are the finest warriors in the galaxy. Fortunately, there are not many of them. The Turian homeworld Palaven has a metal-poor core, generating a weak magnetic field and allowing more solar radiation into the atmosphere. To deal with this, most forms of life on Palaven evolved some form of metallic exoskeleton to protect themselves. Their reflective plate-like skin makes Turians less susceptible to long-term, low-level radiation exposure, but they do not possess any sort of natural armour. A Turian's thick skin does not stop projectiles or directed energy bolts. Although life on Palaven is carbon-based and oxygen-breathing, it is built on dextro amino acids. This places the Turians in a distinct minority on the galactic stage. Quarians are the only other known sapient dextroprotein race. The food of humans, Asari or Salarians, who evolved in levo amino acid-based biospheres, will at best pass through Turian systems without providing any nutrition. At worst, it will trigger an allergic reaction that can be fatal if not immediately treated. The harsh Krogan homeworld conditioned the Krogan psychology for toughness just as it did the body. Krogan have always had a tendency to be selfish, unsympathetic, and blunt. They respect strength and self-reliance and are neither surprised nor offended by treachery. The weak and the selfish do not live long. In their culture, looking out for number one is simply a matter of course. After their defeat in the rebellions, the very concept of Krogan leadership was discredited. Where a warlord could once command enough power to bring entire solar systems to heel and become overlord, these days it is rare for a single leader to have more than 1,000 warriors swear allegiance to him. Most Krogan trust and serve no one but themselves. This solitary attitude stems in part from a deep sense of fatalism and futility, a profound social effect of the genophage that caused Krogan numbers to dwindle to a relative handful. Not only are they angry that the entire galaxy seems out to get them, the Krogan are also generally pessimistic about their race's chance of survival. The surviving Krogan see no point of building for the future, for there will be no future. The Krogan live for an attitude of kill, pillage, and be selfish, for tomorrow we die. Salarian intelligence field agents are grouped into an organisation called the Special Tasks Group. STG operators work in independent cells, performing dangerous missions such as counter-terrorism, infiltration reconnaissance, assassination, and sabotage. The STG is a proactive organisation, puncturing worrisome trends before they become movements. At any time, a dozen groups are operating covertly within the lawless terminal systems, sowing dissent amongst the various factions. Civilian analysts also note how troublesome hinge point individuals in Terminus frequently meet unexpected deaths. STG operators are feared throughout the galaxy for their clear-eyed, remorseless practicality. They are willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their mission, even if it kills civilians or results in the team's own destruction. In many ways, they are akin to the Council Spectres. Recently, a number of STG cells have been redeployed from Salarian Union. It is assumed that they are in the Terminus and Attican Traverse, investigating reports of Geth activity beyond the Perseus Veil. The migrant fleet has little economic base, operating in a state of perpetual hand-to-mouth. While Quarian ships include light manufacturing and assembly plants, they lack heavy industries such as refining and shipbuilding. The fleet has tankers for water purification and oxygen cracking, but the space-intensive nature of agriculture limits food production. A single disaster could destroy the fragile balance. The Quarians earn income in creative ways. Because the government is obliged to provide food, water, air, and medical support for every individual, the Conclave strategically determines the course of the fleet to bring in resources and income. The species who suspects the migrant fleet is heading towards their space often offers a gift of surplus starships, fuel, and resources to convince the Conclave to alter course. As the fleet passes through a system, swarms of mining vessels work over asteroids for metals and siliceous materials and cometary bodies for water, ice, and organics. Quarian miners are adepts at locating and strip mining spaceborne resources. This sparks conflict with corporations already working the system. Large mining concerns spend millions on lobbyists and public relations, portraying the Quarians as locusts, devouring the resources of a system before moving on. The greatest asset of the Quarians is their rarefied skills. Most are experienced miners. Due to their life of perpetual salvage and repair, they're skilled engineers and technicians. More than once, the very corporations that lobby against the Quarians have made backroom deals with the fleet, arranging for skilled Quarians to fill space engineering jobs that other species would demand higher wages for. Quarians are widely hated amongst the working classes. "The Quarians are coming to take our jobs," is a common response to the fleet's approach. Due to the Quarians' precarious existence and the need to enforce strict rationing, government is somewhat autocratic. The migrant fleet's operations are directed by the Admiralty, a board of 5 military officers who are advised by a legislative body called the Conclave. Each vessel in the fleet has the right to send representatives to the Conclave aboard the flagship. The number of representatives is based on crew size. Larger clans, with bigger ships and more votes, form the cores of political blocs. Opposition comes from the Outriders coalition, with delegates from thousands of smaller ships. The Admiralty defers to the Conclave's decisions in most circumstances. However, if all 5 members agree that a Conclave decision jeopardises the survival of the fleet and cannot get the Conclave to address their concerns, they have the right to summarily overturn the legislative decision. After the Admiralty uses this extraordinary power, they must resign. If the Admiralty does not step down after using their veto, the rest of the military is obliged to arrest them. Each ship captain has authority over his vessel, but is advised by an elected civilian council, just as the Admiralty is advised by the Conclave. This relationship may range from cooperation to polite tolerance to outright hostility, but any captain who overrules his council without good reason is relieved by command by the Admiralty. Many Quarian ships are owned by clans who pool their resources to purchase used vessels from private sellers. Large ships are prestigious for big rich clans, but a small ship means status for a small clan with enough personal wealth to afford a private vessel. Clan vessel captains are not subject to dismissal by the Admiralty. Abusive captains are a family problem if they do not disrupt the operations of the fleet. Although the Conclave establishes civil law much as any planet-based democracy, enforcement and trials are more unique. After the flight from the Geth, there were few constables to police the millions of civilians aboard the fleet, so the Navy parcelled out Marine squads to maintain order and enforce the law. Today, Quarian Marines have evolved training and tactics akin to civilian police, but remain adept at combat in the confined spaces of a starship, and remain fully under the command of the military. Once taken into custody, the accused is brought before the ship's captain for judgment. While the ship's council may make recommendations, tradition holds that the captain has absolute authority in matters of discipline. Most are lenient, assigning additional or more odious maintenance tasks aboard the ship. Persistent recidivists are accidentally left on the next habitable world. This practice of abandoning criminals on other people's planets is a point of friction between the Quarians and the systems they pass through. Captains rarely have another choice. With space and resources at a premium, supporting a non-productive prison population is not an option. In the early years, many Quarian freighters were armed and used as irregular privateers. Civilian ships still show a strong preference for armament, making them unpopular targets for pirates. Though they have rebuilt their military, there are still mere hundreds of warships to protect tens of thousands of ships. The Quarian Navy follows strict routines of patrol and takes no chances. If the intent of an approaching ship can't be ascertained, they shoot to kill. The migrant fleet is the largest concentration of starfaring vessels in the galaxy, sprawling across millions of kilometers. It can take days for the entire fleet to pass through a mass relay. When the Quarians fled their homeworld, the fleet was a motley aggregation of freighters, shuttles, industrial vessels, and the odd warship. After 3 centuries, all have been modified to support larger crews as comfortably as possible. As the Quarians achieved stability, they began weeding out the ships least suitable for long-term habitation, selling them and pooling the money to buy larger and more space-worthy hulls. This process is ongoing, as vessels wear out and break down. While some ships enjoy dedicated cabins with full privacy and sanitary facilities, many more are former freighters, whose cargo bays and containers are pressurized and divided into family spaces using simple metal cubicle bulkheads. The Quarians enliven these austere spaces with colourful quilts and tapestries, which also help muffle sound. The day-to-day operations of the fleet, traffic control, station keeping, supply distribution and so on, are under military jurisdiction. Though ship captains have the authority to deviate from their assigned positions and may leave the fleet at any time, they are assumed to do so at their own risk. As the migrant fleet moves around the galaxy, Many ships split off to pursue individual goals, returning days or years later. When Quarians of the migrant fleet reach young adulthood, they must leave their birth ship and find a new crew to accept them as permanent residents. To prove themselves, they must recover something of value. This is offered to their prospective captain as proof that they will not be a mere burden on the shoestring resources of the ship. The process is called the pilgrimage. Stripped of ritual, the pilgrimage is merely an attempt to maintain genetic diversity within the small, relatively isolated population bases that make up the migrant fleet. If the young stayed and married within their birth vessel, the risk of inbreeding would increase sharply. Quarians are surgically fitted with their various immunity-boosting implants in preparation for leaving on pilgrimage. Having grown up within the sterile, controlled environments of the migrant fleet ships, Quarians have virtually no natural immune system. The ancient Quarians practiced ancestor worship. Even after abandoning faith for secularism, Quarians continued to revere the wisdom of the elders. As time passed and technology advanced, they inevitably turned their knowledge to preserving the personalities and memories of the elderly as computer virtual intelligences. These recordings became a repository of knowledge and wisdom, stored in a central databank and available through any extranet connection. They held no illusions that this was a form of immortality. Like all virtual intelligences, their electronically preserved ancestors were not truly sapient. This was considered a surmountable problem. Sapience could surely be reduced to simple mathematics. The Quarians began exhaustive research into creating artificial intelligence so they could learn to escape the bounds of mortality and give their ancestral records true awareness. Unfortunately, the life the Quarians created did not accept the same truths they did. The Geth destroyed the ancestor databanks when they took over. In the centuries since they have evacuated their homeworld, most Quarians have returned to religion in various forms. Many believe that the rise of the Geth and the destruction of their ancestors were chastisement for arrogantly forsaking the old ways and venerating self-made idols. Others have a more philosophical outlook, believing that their race was indeed arrogant, but no supernatural agency lay behind the Geth revolt. Rather, the Quarians' actions wrought their own doom. Either way, every Quarian would agree that their own hubris cost them their homeworld. The Citadel Convention's diplomatic talks occurred in the wake of the Krogan rebellions, as a response to the destruction of the conflict and an attempt to distance the Council from the brutal Krogan warfare. The conventions regulate the use of weapons of mass destruction. A WMD causes environmental alterations to a world. A bomb that produces a large crater is not considered a WMD. A bomb that causes a nuclear winter is. Use of weapons of mass destruction is forbidden on garden worlds like Earth, with ecospheres that can readily support a population. If a habitable world is destroyed, it will not be replaced for millions of years. The conventions do not forbid the use of weapons of mass destruction on hostile worlds or in sealed space station environments. Many militaries continue to develop and maintain stockpiles. Conventions also graded weapons of mass destruction into tiers of concern. Tier 1 is the greatest threat to galactic peace. Tier 1, large kinetic impactors, such as asteroid drops or deorbiting space stations. Effectively free and available in any system, in the form of debris left over from planetary accretion, kinetic impactors are the weapon of choice for terrorists and third galaxy nations. Tier 2, uncontrolled self-replicating weapons, such as nanotechnology, viral or bacteriological organisms, von Neumann devices and destructive computer viruses. These weapons can lie dormant for millennia, waiting for a careless visitor to carry them onto another world. Tier 3, large energy burst weapons, such as nuclear or antimatter warheads. Tier 4, alien species deliberately introduced to crowd out native forms necessary for the health of an ecosystem. Ecological tampering can take years to bear fruit, making it difficult to prove. Citadel Security is a volunteer police service answering to the Citadel Council. The 200,000 constables of CSEC are responsible for maintaining public order in the densely populated Citadel. They also provide pirate suppression, customs enforcement, and search and rescue throughout the Citadel cluster. CSEC has 6 divisions: Enforcement, uniformed officers who patrol the Citadel and respond to emergencies. Investigation, detectives who puzzle out the truth behind crimes and bring perpetrators to justice. Customs, screens the thousands of passengers and cargo containers that pass through the Citadel's ports every day. Network deals with cybercrimes like identity and copyright theft, hacking and viral attacks, and illegal artificial intelligence. Special Response deals with hostage situations, bombs, and heavily armed criminals. In the unlikely event that attackers board the Citadel, they are also the front line of defence, armed with military-grade equipment. Patrol, naval arm, with ships stationed throughout the Citadel cluster. Unlike the other divisions, they are rarely seen at the Citadel, nor do they stay in one place for long. Joining CSEC is prestigious. Applicants must be sponsored by a Citadel councillor or the ambassador of an associate council race. Generally, applicants have many years of distinguished service in the military or police forces of their nation, but an inexperienced applicant with demonstrable talent will be fairly considered. CSEC and the Spectres are often at odds. Many CSEC members, notably current executive Anari Parlin, believe that allowing Spectres to be above the law is a dangerous practice. The actions of Sauron Arterius lend credence to this position. The Spectres, in turn, are aggravated when CSEC's dedication to procedure and due process hampers their investigations. The Presidium Ring is an enclosed loop of park-like space serving as the connection point for the wards. The interior walls are lined with the embassies of influential species and private residences for the galaxy's elite. The Presidium is full of open-air restaurants, bars, and luxurious meeting areas. Gravity is about 1/3 Earth normal. A holographic sky is projected over the ceiling of the ring. Unlike the 24/7 bustle of the wards, the Presidium maintains a 20-hour day schedule, with a 6-hour night where lights are dimmed and the sky goes through a night cycle. Offices and residences are often open to the interior. It is not unusual for embassies to have no exterior wall at all. This does not cause a crime problem due to the heavy CSEC presence and ubiquitous monitoring devices on the Presidium. Thieves are quickly identified and apprehended. The ring is the location of the Citadel spaceports. Being closer to the centre of spin, there is less motion for a ship to match, and the reduced spin gravity makes handling cargo easier. Hundreds of ships pass through the Citadel every day, and every species with an embassy is granted a private dock. The tower, at the centre of the ring, holds the administration of the Citadel Council. The tower rises over 1 kilometre from the ring, appearing to thrust forward parallel to the ward arms. As the tower is at the centre of the spin axis, it experiences little centrifugal force. Gravity is maintained using mass effect fields at a 90-degree angle to the ring and the wards. A consular dock can be found at the base of the tower. While normally used for diplomatic couriers and spectre business, the shuttles docked here can evacuate the council government in an emergency. The Citadel is surrounded by a blue-tinted reflection nebula. The light of the nebula is actually light from the Citadel, scattered and reflected back at the station. At first, the Serpent Nebula was assumed to be made of microscopic construction debris. Prevailing theory holds that the Protheans used molecular nanotechnology to manufacture the incredibly durable materials used in the Citadel. But unlike other nebulae, the Serpent does not dissipate over time. Therefore, it must be replenished constantly. The current popular theory is that the non-recyclable waste collected by the Citadel's keepers is somehow rendered down to the atomic or molecular level and ejected into the cloud. The thick nebula presents a navigation hazard. Beyond the relatively clear areas around the Citadel, electrical discharges are common. These are not blocked by kinetic barriers and can severely damage metal-framed starships. In addition, some dense knots of dust can overwhelm the repulsion of kinetic barriers on smaller ships. If such a vessel is moving fast enough at the time, the effects are similar to being hit by a sandblaster. Attempting to reach the Citadel through open space navigation is unadvisable. The only safe approach is through the various mass relays that orbit it. Although the Citadel is equipped with Mass Effect generating Element 0 cores, most of the gravity on the station is generated by the centrifugal force of rotation. The majority of the Citadel's population lives in the wards, the 5 massive arms of the station that house the residential and commercial districts. Many galactic races have established cultural enclaves here. Population density and cost of living are extremely high, akin to Earth cities such as Hong Kong and Singapore. The wards are open-topped, with skyscrapers rising from the superstructure. Towers are sealed against vacuum, as the breathable atmosphere envelope is only maintained to a height of about 7 metres. The atmosphere is contained by the centrifugal force of rotation and a membrane of dense, colourless sulfur hexafluoride gas, held in place by carefully managed mass effect fields. The view from the wards is spectacular. In the background, stars, Serpent Nebula, and the nearby blue giant called the Widow move across the sky as the station rotates to stabilise itself. In the foreground, the lights of buildings and vehicles on the opposing ward arms perpetually shine. The Citadel has no real day or night. While the station keeps to standard galactic time for political functions, businesses rarely close, and residents acclimate themselves to sleep and work according to personal need rather than a day-night cycle. Additions and modifications are constantly being constructed, though they must stay within certain specifications that will not compromise the operation of the station. Occasionally, the keepers will descend on an area of the wards and move or change the architecture without explanation. Due to the destructive residents have learned to live with these inexplicable the council races agreed at the Frigate and Naval Conference to fix a ratio of Dreadnought construction between themselves. At the top of the pyramid is the peacekeeping Turian fleet. Below the Turians are the other council races, currently the Asari and the Salarians. Council associate races are at the bottom. The Human Systems Alliance is part of this last group. The ratio of Turian to Council to Associate Dreadnoughts is 5:3:1. For every Dreadnought humans are permitted to build, the Asari have 3, and the Turians 5. In the 22nd century, manipulation of the human genome became commonplace. Techniques of genetic engineering advanced to the point where the rich could custom build fetuses that grew into stronger, smarter, more attractive adults. In more permissive regions, custom-designed life forms and uplifted animals occupied an ill-defined niche between property and sapient being. Travel to planets with unique forms of life brought an awareness that Earth's unique biodiversity could be lost if spliced and hybridized to gain useful alien qualities. The Sudham-Walcott Genetic Heritage Act was passed by the Systems Alliance Parliament in 2161. It imposed sharp restrictions on controversial uses of genetic engineering, but provided government subsidies for beneficial applications. Screening and therapy. Most governments provide free assessment and corrective therapy for genetic diseases in prospective parents. This has nearly eliminated everything from cystic fibrosis to nearsightedness. The earlier screening and therapy is performed, the more comprehensive the results. Though ideally performed on artificially fertilised zygotes in a lab, procedures are available for embryos in the womb and newborns out of respect for personal beliefs. Enhancement. Improvement of natural human abilities is legal, but adding new abilities is not. Treatments to improve strength, reflexes, mental acuity, or appearance are permitted. Adding a tail or the ability to digest cellulose is not. Some genetic enhancement is provided for free to Alliance military recruits, but the average citizen must pay for the privilege. The process can take years to reach fruition in an adult. Engineering. Artificial hybridization of genes from compatible non-human species with human genetic code is illegal. Creation of designed life is broadly legal and mainly used for terraforming and medical applications, but sentient creatures are heavily regulated, and creation of sapient life is outlawed by both the Systems Alliance and the Citadel Council. Humanity has encountered many galactic species. Wars have been few, but mistrust is rife. Politically, the Alliance is a peaceful trade partner of the Turians. As a practical matter, however, there is simmering antagonism and bigotry between both populations over the First Contact War of 2157. The Alliance enjoys good relations with the Asari, though many privately believe the matriarchs are aristocratic and overly cautious. Though humans know better than to unconditionally trust any Salarian, their shared restless, reckless ways make them natural allies against the conservative Turians and Asari. The Krogan have no unified government, but individuals are generally treated as potential criminals, a reputation most Krogan enjoy living down to. The Alliance has no formal contact with the Quarians. Their migrant fleet has not yet passed through any human-settled system. The Batarians are rivals for control of the Skyllian Verge. They severed their treaties with the Citadel to prosecute a colonial conflict against the Alliance. Officially, there is no war, but neither is there any peace. As the human race expands its territory and raises the general standard of living, demand for industrial resources continues to grow. Many planets, moons, and asteroids contain a wealth of resources, but many systems have barely been charted, let alone thoroughly surveyed. Unmanned probes are one solution, but they are often lost to space hazards, unforeseen circumstances, or theft by salvages. In recent years, AGES, the Alliance Geological Service, has offered bounties to private individuals or teams willing to perform mineralogical surveys on the frontier. This survey data is made publicly available to further corporate development. Due to the cost of travel and the dangers of operating on hostile worlds, it is rarely a profitable endeavour. Light metals, metals with low atomic weight, are often used in the construction of spacecraft and vehicles. Heavy metals, metals with higher atomic weights, are used to construct equipment components. The platinum group elements are particularly useful. Rare earths, most useful materials in this category are radioactives, or magnets. Gases, various gases are required to support all known forms of sapient life. Some are commonly used as fuel. The Alliance military is of great concern to the galaxy. At first contact with the Turians, they were completely inexperienced. Turian disdain changed to respect after the relief of Shangzi, where the humans surprised them with novel technologies and tactics. The human devotion to understanding and adapting to modern space warfare stunned the staid Council races. For hundreds of years, they had lived behind secure walls of long-proven technologies and tactics. The Council regards the Alliance as a sleeping giant. Less than 3% of humans volunteer to serve in the military, a lower proportion than any other species. While competent, Alliance soldiers are neither as professional as the Turians, nor as skilled as the Asari. Their strengths lie in fire support, flexibility, and speed. They make up for lack of numbers with sophisticated technical support, BIs, drones, artillery, electronic warfare, an emphasis on mobility and individual initiative. Their doctrine is not based on absorbing and dishing out heavy shocks like the Turians and Krogan. Rather, they bypass enemy strong points and launch deep into their rear, cutting supply lines and destroying headquarters and support units, leaving enemies to wither on the vine. On defence, the human military is a rapid reaction force that lives by Sun Tzu's maxim, "He who tries to defend everything defends nothing." Garrisons are intended for scouting rather than combat, avoiding engagement to observe and report on invaders using drones. The token garrisons of human colonies make it easy for alien powers to secure them, for which the Alliance media criticises the military. However, the powerful fleets stationed at phase gate nexuses, such as Arcturus, are just a few hours or days from any colony within their sphere of responsibility. In the event of an attack, they respond with overwhelming force. The system Alliance is military jargon. Ashore, when a ship's crew leaves the vessel, they are ashore. Though normally used regarding planets, it can refer to boarding a space station. Away, when a ship releases the equipment tethering it to a space station or surface dock, it is away. Aye aye, the proper way to acknowledge an order. If told to attack, the correct response is aye aye sir. If asked, are you proud to be a Marine? The correct response is yes sir. ASAP, pronounced ASAP, an acronym of as soon as possible. Belay, stop, cease. Bridge, the navigation centre of a spacecraft, where the steering is done. Captain's mast, non-judicial disciplinary proceedings by unit commanders. CIC, Combat Information Centre, the command centre of a spacecraft. The CIC is filled with sensor displays to make sense out of the chaos of combat. ECM, electronic countermeasures used to avoid enemy sensors, from passive emissions masking to active jamming. EVA, extravehicular activity, time spent in a pressure suit, outside of a vehicle, spacecraft or station. Flank, the flank is the side of a military formation. Since the soldiers are facing elsewhere, an enemy that can attack on the flank can often turn it or roll it up. FNG, freaking new guys, a derisive term for inexperienced personnel. Ground side, the surface of a planet. Helmsman, the crew member who pilots a spacecraft. Radar, light amplified detection and ranging, an active sensor that bounces lasers off an object to determine its bearing and distance. Radar has sufficient resolution that the data can be reconstructed into an image. Shore party, spacecraft crew sent ashore on official business. Silent running, an old submariner's term used aboard the Normandy to denote when stealth systems are active. SITREP, abbreviation of Situation Report, an evaluation of the current military situation. Spacer, someone who has spent most of their life in space. EXO, Executive Officer, the second in command of an Alliance warship. The EXO is responsible for administrative and personnel matters. The Alliance uses a modified version of the ranking system that has been used for hundreds of years. Soldiers are classified into rank and file enlisted personnel, experienced non-commissioned officers, NCOs, and specially trained officers. The divide between naval personnel and ground forces, Marines, is small. Ground units are a specialised branch of the fleet, just as fighter squadrons are. This unity of command is imposed by the futility of fighting without control of orbit. Without the Navy, any army is pointless. The Marines, as a matter of pride, maintain some of their traditional rank titles. For example, Marines have privates and corporals instead of servicemen. In ascending order of responsibility, the ranks of the Alliance are enlisted personnel, serviceman 3rd class or private 2nd class, serviceman 2nd class or private 1st class, serviceman 1st class or corporal. The NCOs are Service Chief, Gunnery Chief, Operations Chief, and the officers 2nd Lieutenant, 1st Lieutenant, Staff Lieutenant, Lieutenant Commander, Staff Commander, Captain or Major, Rear Admiral or General, Admiral, Fleet Admiral. The pantheistic mainstream Asari religion is Siari, which roughly translates as all is one. The faithful agree on certain core truths: the universe is a consciousness, every life within it is an aspect of the greater whole, and death is a merging of one's spiritual energy back into the greater universal consciousness. Siarists don't specifically believe in reincarnation. They believe that spiritual energy returned to the universal consciousness upon death will eventually be used to fill new mortal vessels. Siari became popular after the Asari left their homeworld and discovered their ability to meld with nearly any form of life. This ability is seen as proof that all life is fundamentally similar. Siari princesses see their role as promoting unity between the disparate shards of the universe's awareness. Before the rise of Siari pantheism, Asari religions were as diverse as their political opinions. The strongest survivor of those days is the monotheistic religion worshipping the goddess Athame. Like the Asari, the goddess cycles through the triple aspects of maiden, matron, and matriarch. The Turian government is a hierarchical meritocracy. While it has great potential for misuse, this is tempered by the civic duty and personal responsibility Turians learn in childhood. Turians have 27 citizenship tiers, beginning with civilians, client races and children. The initial period of military service is the 2nd tier. Formal citizenship is conferred at the 3rd tier, after boot camp. For client races, citizenship is granted after the individual musters out. Higher-ranked citizens are expected to lead and protect subordinates. Lower-ranked citizens are expected to obey and support superiors. Promotion to another tier of citizenship is based on the personal assessment of one's superiors and co-rankers. Throughout their lives, Turians ascend to higher tiers and are occasionally demoted to lower ones. The stigma associated with demotion lies not on the individual, but on those who promoted him when he wasn't ready for additional responsibility. This curbs a tendency to promote individuals into positions beyond their capabilities. Settling into a role and rank is not considered stagnation. Turians value knowing one's own limitations more than being ambitious. At the top are the Primarchs, who each rule a colonisation cluster. Primarchs vote on matters of national import. They otherwise maintain a hands-off policy, trusting the citizens on each level below them to do their jobs competently. Turians enjoy broad freedoms. So long as one completes his duties and does not prevent others from completing theirs, nothing is forbidden. For example, there are no laws against recreational drug use, but if someone is unable to complete his duties due to drug use, his superiors step in. Judicial proceedings are interventions. Peers express their concern and try to convince the offender to change. If rehabilitation fails, Turians have no qualms about sentencing dangerous individuals to life at hard labour for the state. Humanity in the Systems Alliance timeline. 2069, Armstrong Outpost at Shackleton Crater becomes the first human settlement on Luna. It is formally founded on July the 24th, the 100th anniversary of the first lunar landing. 2103, Lowell City in Eon Chasma becomes the first human settlement on Mars. 2137, the Eldfeld Ashland Energy Corporation demonstrates helium-3 fuel extraction from the atmosphere of Saturn. 2142, construction of Gagarin Station, Jump Zero, begins beyond the orbit of Pluto. 2148, prospectors discover the Prothean ruins at Prometheus Planum on Mars. 2149, translation of Prothean data leads humans to the Charon Mass Relay, Systems Alliance founded to coordinate exploration and colonization of extrasolar worlds. 2151, a shipping accident at Singapore International Spaceport exposes downwind communities to containers of dust form element 0. Alliance begins construction of Arcturus Station. 2152, roughly 30% of the children born in Singapore after element 0 exposure suffer from cancerous growths. Systems Alliance begins settlement of Earth's first extrasolar colony world, the planet Demeter. 2151, Commander Shepard born. 2155. Systems Alliance occupies completed portions of Arcturus Station as a headquarters. 2156. Some children of Singapore exhibit minor telekinetic abilities. 2157. Turians encounter human explorers, the First Contact War. Occupation and liberation of the human colony of Shanji. 2158. Humans learn potential of biotics. An international effort to track element zero exposures begins. Roughly 10% of exposed children show some level of biotic ability. 2160. Systems Alliance Parliament formed. 2165. Humans establish an embassy on the Citadel. 2170. Batarian slavers attack the Alliance colony of Mindwar. 2176. The Skillian Blitz. Pirates and slavers attacked Elysium, the human capital in the Skillian Verge. 2177. Thresher Moors devour the Alliance colony of Akuz. 2178. In retaliation for the Skillian Blitz, an Alliance fleet wipes out an army of slavers on the moon of Torfan. 2183. The current date. Translation technology. Human cultures remain linguistically divided. Some converse in Spanish, others in Mandarin, Arabic, Swahili, etc. Every alien race has their own equally broad panoply of languages and dialects. Most individuals know only their mother tongue and rely on machine translation. Modern portable computers allow anyone with a few hundred credits of equipment to enjoy seamless real-time translation of alien languages, courtesy of handheld PDAs, computers in clothing or jewellery, or subdermal implants. Without fast and accurate translation, galactic trade and culture could not exist. Governments provide subsidised software, updated through the public extranet on the fly, often as users approach spaceport customs facilities. Even the Batarians, who isolated themselves from galactic society nearly 2 decades ago, take pains to provide up-to-date glossaries and linguistic rules, though most suspect this is only so they can continue exporting propaganda. It is still considered broad-minded and practical to be able to speak without machine aid. Children often take courses in alien language, and most races can speak the simplified artificial trade tongue with little difficulty. Some species must rely on machine translation to interact with the rest of the galaxy. Hanar, for example, cannot reproduce the spoken languages of any humanoid species, and other races cannot reproduce Hanar bioluminescence without mechanical aid. Newly discovered or obscure races don't have machine translation available until the linguists have had time to study them. Arcturus Station is the gateway to Sol, a 5-kilometre diameter Stanford Taurus-type space station at the trailing Lagrange point of the gas giant Themis. Construction on Arcturus Station began in 2151 and concluded in 2162. It was inaugurated in 2156 and has served as the military and political headquarters of the Systems Alliance from the First Contact War until the present. When humanity activated the Charon mass relay in 2149, it led to Arcturus, 36 light-years from Sol, Earth's sun. Arcturus is the third brightest star seen from Earth. It is an ancient red giant from the generation born before Sol. Its worlds are either gas giants or ice chunks. While some rocky debris exists, the metal content is 25% lower than normal. To build Arcturus Station, metallic asteroids were towed through the mass relays to the construction site. Many of these asteroids remain near the station, their mined-out areas home to transient populations. The expense of bringing construction materials into the system was acceptable due to its strategic value. With 3 primary mass relays in addition to the secondary one to Sol, Arcturus is a major communications and military choke point. The Alliance First Fleet is based in Arcturus, where it can guard the gates to Sol and react to incursions in the 3 connected clusters. The station also hosts the Systems Alliance Parliament and the Systems Alliance Military General Headquarters. Its permanent population is approximately 45,000. Arcturus is actually from the Galactic Halo, one of a cluster of 52 stars that are crashing through the disk of the galaxy. In 1 billion years, Arcturus will be sailing through the depths of extragalactic dark space. The Salarian government is called the Salarian Union. It is a labyrinthine web of matrilineal bloodlines, with political alliances formed through interbreeding. In many ways, the Salarian political network functions like the noble families of Earth's medieval Europe. Structurally, the government consists of fiefdoms, baronies, duchies, planets, and marches, colonisation clusters. These are human nicknames. The original Salarian is unpronounceable. Each area is ruled by a single Dalatress, matriarchal head of household, and represents an increasing amount of territory and prestige within the Salarian political web. Approaching 100 members, the first circle of a Salarian's clan comprises parents, siblings, uncles, aunts and cousins. The next circle includes second cousins, etc., and escalates to well over 1,000 members. The fourth or fifth circle of a clan numbers into the millions. Salarian loyalty is greatest to their first circle and diminishes from there. Their photographic memory allows Salarians to recognise all their myriad relatives. In principle, the Salarian military is similar to the Alliance, a small volunteer army that focuses on manoeuvre warfare. What differentiates the Salarians is not their equipment or doctrine, but their intelligence services and rules of engagement. The Salarians believe that a war should be won before it begins. Conventional wisdom holds that the Salarians know everything about everyone, and this is not far from the truth. In war, the unquestioned superiority of their intelligence services allows them to use their small military to maximum effectiveness. Well before fighting breaks out, they possess complete knowledge of their enemy's positions, intentions, and timetable. In every war the Salarians have fought, they struck first and without warning. For the Salarians, to know an enemy plans to attack and to let it happen is folly. To announce their own plans to attack is insanity. They find the human moral concepts of do not fire until fired upon and declare a war before prosecuting it incredibly naive. In defensive wars, they execute devastating preemptive strikes hours before the enemy's own attacks. On the offense, they have never telegraphed their intentions with a declaration of war before attacking. Biotics are virtually unknown in the Salarian military. Those with such abilities are considered too valuable to be used as cannon fodder and are assigned to the intelligence services. While capable of defending themselves against most threats, the Salarians know that they are small fish in a universe filled with sharks. As a point of survival, they have cultivated strong alliances with larger powers, particularly with the Turians. Though the relationship between the two species was rocky at first, due to the Krogan uplift fiasco, the Salarians take pains to keep this relation strong enough that anyone who might threaten them risks Turian intervention. Although Turians have a strict moral code, their belief in individual responsibility means that the concepts of good and evil are simply the individual's choice between egotism and altruism in any given decision. They have no concept of good deities that encourage noble behaviour, or evil ones that tempt individuals to misdeeds. Turians believe that groups and areas have spirits that transcend the individual. For example, a military unit would be considered to have a literal spirit that embodies the honour and courage it has displayed. A city's spirit reflects the accomplishments and industry of its residents. An ancient tree's spirit reflects the beauty and tranquility of the area it grows within. These spirits are neither good nor evil, nor are they appealed to for intercession. Turians do not believe spirits can affect the world, but spirits can inspire the living. Prayers and rituals allow an individual to converse with a spirit for guidance or inspiration. For example, a Turian who finds his loyalty tested may appeal to the spirit of his unit, hoping to reconnect with the pride and honour of the group. A Turian who wishes to create a work of art may attempt to connect with the spirit of a beautiful location. Turians enjoy absolute freedom of religion and can practice whatever appeals to them, so long as it does not impede anyone's ability to perform their duties. There are many practitioners of the Asari Cyrist philosophy. Since opening dialogue with the Human Systems Alliance, some Turians have embraced Confucianism and Zen Buddhism. As positive or negative electric current is passed through an FTL drive core, it acquires a static electrical charge. Drives can be operated an average of 50 hours before they reach charge saturation. This change is proportional to the magnitude of mass reduction. A heavier or faster ship reaches saturation more quickly. If the charge is allowed to build, the core will discharge into the hull of a ship. All ungrounded crew members are fried to a crisp, all electronic systems are burned out, and metal bulkheads may be melted and fused together. The safest way to discharge a core is to land on a planet and establish a connection to the ground, like a lightning rod. Larger vessels like Dreadnoughts cannot land and must discharge into a planetary magnetic field. The ship passes the charge from the drive core to the exterior armoured hull, then dives into the magnetic field. As the hull discharges, sheets of lightning jump away into the field, creating beautiful auroral displays on the planet. The ship must retract its sensors and weapons while dumping charge to prevent damage, leaving it blind and helpless. Discharging at a moon with a weak magnetic field can take days. Discharging into the powerful field of a gas giant may require less than an hour. Deep space facilities such as the Citadel often have special discharge facilities available for visiting ships. Heat limits the length and intensity of ship-to-ship combat. Starships generate enormous heat when they fire high-energy weapons, perform manoeuvring burns, and run on board combat electronics. In combat, warships produce heat more quickly than they can disperse it. As heat builds within a vessel, the crewed spaces become increasingly uncomfortable. Before the heat reaches lethal levels, a ship must win or retreat by entering FTL. After an FTL run, the ship halts, shuts down non-essential systems, and activates the heat radiation gear. Combat endurance varies by ship design and by the battle's location. Battles in the deep cold of interstellar space can go on for some time. Engagements close to a star are brief. Since habitable worlds are usually close to a star, battles over them are frantic. Shells lofted by surface navies crash back to Earth when their acceleration is overwhelmed by gravity and air resistance. In space, a projectile has unlimited range. It will keep moving until it hits something. Practical gunnery range is determined by the velocity of the attacker's ordnance and the maneuverability of the target. Beyond a certain range, a small ship's ability to dodge trumps a large attacker's projectile speed. The longest ranged combat occurs between dreadnoughts, whose projectiles have the highest velocity but are the least maneuverable. The shortest range combat is between frigates, which have the slowest projectile velocities and highest maneuverability. Space combat general tactics. Opposing dreadnoughts open with a main gun artillery duel at extreme ranges of tens of thousands of kilometers. The fleets close, maintaining evasive lateral motion while keeping their bow guns facing the enemy. Fighters are launched and attempt to close to disrupt a torpedo range. Cautious admirals weaken the enemy with ranged fire and fighter strikes before committing to close action. Aggressive commanders advance so cruisers and frigates can engage. At long range, the main guns of cruisers become useful. Friendly interceptors engage enemy fighters until the attackers enter the range of ship-based Guardian fire. Dreadnoughts fire from the rear, screened by smaller ships. Commanders must decide whether to commit to a general melee or retreat into FTL. At medium range, ships can broadside guns. Fleets intermingle, and it becomes difficult to retreat in order. Ships with damaged kinetic barriers are vulnerable to Wolfgate frigate flotillas that speed through the battle space. Only fighters and frigates enter close knife fight ranges of 10 or fewer kilometers. Fighters loose their disruptor torpedoes, bringing down a ship's kinetic barriers and allowing it to be swarmed by frigates. Guardian lasers become viable weapons, swatting down fighters and boiling away warship armour. Neither dreadnoughts nor cruisers can use their main guns at close range. Laying the bow on a moving target becomes impossible. Superheated thruster exhaust becomes a hazard. Cabins give each individual 10 cubic meters of space. On larger vessels, private rooms are common. As ships get smaller, the number of crew packed into a single wardroom increases. Asari prefer shared spaces even on large vessels, while Krogan territorial instincts make it impossible for them to cohabitate even on the smallest ships. On smaller vessels, hot bunking is the norm. Crew members assigned to different watches share the same bunk. When one gets off duty, he wakes up the person in the bunk. While that crewman is on duty, the first gets his rack time. Spacecraft compartments can be isolated by airtight doors in case of decompression. The cinematic vision of explosive decompression is a fiction. Hold compartments either take enough damage that occupants are killed instantly, or leak slowly enough that they are able to reach protective gear. Compartments are equipped with emergency life support apparatus, fireproof plastic bubbles with air bottles. Small when stowed, ELSA comfortably accommodate one individual inflated. Damage control procedure cuts off ventilation to burning compartments. Without oxygen to consume, fires die in seconds. The compartment is repressurized afterwards for crew recovery. Mass effect fields create an artificial gravity, AGRAV, plane below the decks, preventing muscle atrophy and bone loss in 0G. Large vessels arrange their decks perpendicular to their thrust axis. The highest decks are at the bow, and the lowest are at the engines. This allows AGRAV to work with the inertial effects of thrust. Ships that can land arrange their decks laterally so the crew can move about while the vessel is on the ground. Warships normally turn off their AGRAV systems during combat, reducing the heat generated by systems and increasing combat endurance. To provide a point of reference for navigating in 0G, floors are painted a different colour from the walls and ceiling. Cruiserweight starships are the standard combat unit encountered away from large naval bases, the poor bloody infantry of most fleets. Nimble scouting frigates have neither the punch nor the stamina to stand up to serious combat, and the mighty dreadnoughts are a strategic resource, carefully hoarded and committed to the most critical battles. Cruisers perform routine independent show the flag patrols in settled systems and lead flotillas of frigates in small engagements, such as pirate suppression campaigns. In major fleet engagements, cruiser squadrons support the Dreadnought battle line by screening their flanks against enemies attempting to manoeuvre for a main gun bow shot from their vulnerable broadsides. Alliance cruisers are named after cities of Earth. The Dreadnought is the ultimate arbiter of space warfare. Millions of tons of metal, ceramic, and polymer dedicated to the projection of firepower against an enemy vessel of like ability. No sane commander would face a Dreadnought with anything less than another Dreadnought. A Dreadnought's power lies in the length of its main gun. Dreadnoughts range from 800 metres to 1 kilometre long, with a main gun of commensurate length. An 800 metre mass accelerator is capable of accelerating one 2 kg slug to a velocity of 283 km a second every 2 seconds. Each slug has the kinetic energy of 38 kilotons of TNT, 3 times the energy released by the fission weapon that destroyed Hiroshima. When used to bombard planets, some of this kinetic energy is lost due to atmospheric re-entry friction. As a rule of thumb, each Earth atmosphere of air pressure saps approximately 20% of a projectile's impact energy. The Turian fleet presently has 37 dreadnoughts, the Asari 21 and the Salarian 16. Humanity has 6, with an additional hull under construction at Arcturus station. Alliance battleships are named for the mountains of Earth: the Everest class, Everest, Fuji, Elbrus, and the Kilimanjaro class, Kilimanjaro, Taishan, Shasta, and Aconcagua, which is under construction. Frigates are light escort and scouting vessels. They often have extensive Guardian systems to provide anti-fighter screening for capital ships and carry a squad of Marines for security and groundside duty. Unlike larger vessels, frigates are able to land on planets. Frigate drive systems allow them to achieve high faster-than-light cruise speeds. They also have proportionally larger thrusters and lighter design mass, allowing them to manoeuvre more handily. In combat, speed and manoeuvrability make a frigate immune to the long-range fire of larger vessels. In the time it would take the projectiles to reach them, frigates are no longer where they were predicted to be. In fleet combat, frigates are organised into Wolfpack flotillas of 4 to 6. Wolfpack speed through enemy formations, hunting enemy vessels whose kinetic barriers have been taken down by fighter-launched disruptor torpedoes. The Wolfpack circle strafe vulnerable targets, using their superior speed and manoeuvrability to evade return fire. Alliance frigates are named for great battles in human history. Asari have a robust cellular regenerative system. While they do not heal faster than other species, Asari are known to reach 1,000 years of age. Although Asari have one gender, they are not asexual, and Asari provides 2 copies of her own genes to her offspring. The second set is altered in a unique process called melding. During melding, an Asari consciously attunes her nervous system to her partner's, sending and receiving electrical impulses directly through the skin. The partner can be another Asari or an alien of either gender. Effectively, the Asari and her partner briefly become one unified nervous system. This unique means of reproduction is the reason Asari are talented biotics. Their evolved ability to consciously control nerve impulses is very similar to biotic training. Asari believe that their offspring acquire the best qualities of the father from the melded genes, but evidence is anecdotal. Asari pass through 3 climacteric life stages, marked by biochemical and physiological changes. The maiden stage begins at birth, and is marked by the drive to explore and experience. Most young Asari are curious and restless. The matron stage of life begins at around the age of 350, though it can be triggered earlier if the individual melds frequently. This period is marked by a desire to settle in one area and raise children. The matriarch stage begins at around 700, or earlier if the individual melds rarely. Matriarchs become active in their community as sages and counsellors, dispensing wisdom from centuries of experience. While each stage of life is marked by strong biological tendencies, individuals do make unexpected life choices. For example, there are maidens who stay close to home rather than explore, matrons who would rather work than build a family, and matriarchs who have no interest in community affairs. Dispersal of the heat generated by onboard systems is a critical issue for the ship. If it cannot deal with heat, the crew may be cooked within the hull. Radiation is the only way to shed heat in a vacuum. Civilian vessels utilise large, fragile radiator panels that are impossible to armour. Warships use diffuse radiator arrays, ceramic ships along the exterior of the armoured hull. These make the ship appear striped for thermographic sensors. Since the arrangement of the strips depends on the internal configuration of the ship, the patterns for each vessel are unique and striking. On older ships, the DRA strips could become red or white hot. Dubbed tiger stripes or war paint by humans, the glowing DRA had a psychological impact on pirates and irregular forces. Strip radiators are not as efficient as panels, but if damaged by enemy fire, the ship only loses a small portion of its total radiation capacity. In most cases, a vessel's DRA alone allows it to cruise with no difficulties. Operations deep within the solar system can cause problems. Ship engaged in combat can produce titanic amounts of heat from manoeuvring burns and weapons fire. When fighting in a high heat environment, warships employ high efficiency droplet heat sinks. In a droplet system, tanks of liquid sodium or lithium absorb heat within the ship. The liquid is vented from spray nozzles near the bow as a thin sheet of millions of micrometer scale droplets. The droplets are caught at the stern and recycled into the system. A droplet system can sink 10 to 100 times as much heat as DRA strips. Droplet sheets resemble a surface ship's wake through the water. The wake peels out in sharp turns, spreading a fan of droplets as the ship changes vectors and leaves the coolant behind. Light lag prevents sensing in real time at great distances. A ship firing its thrusters at the Charon relay can be easily detected from Earth, 5.75 light hours, 6 billion kilometers away, but Earth will only see the event 5 hours and 45 minutes after it occurs. Due to the light speed limit, defenders can't see enemies coming until they have already arrived. Because there is FTL travel and communication, but no FTL sensors, frigates are crucial for scouting and picket duties. Passive sensors are used for long-range detection, while active sensors obtain short-range, high-quality targeting data. Passive sensors include visual, thermographic, and radio detectors that watch and listen for objects in space. A powered ship emits a great deal of energy: the heat of the life support systems, the radiation given off by power plants and electrical equipment, the exhaust of the thrusters. Starships stand out plainly against the near absolute zero background of space. Passive sensors can be used during FTL travel, but incoming data is significantly distorted by the effects of the mass effect envelope and Doppler shift. Active sensors are radars and high-resolution LiDARs, laser detection and ranging, that emit a ping of energy and listen for return signals. LiDARs have a narrower field of view than radar, but LiDAR resolution allows images of detective objects to be assembled. Active sensors are useless when a ship is moving at faster than light speeds. Disruptor torpedoes are powerful projectiles with warheads that create random and unstable mass effect fields when triggered. These fields warp space-time in a localized area. The rapid, asymmetrical mass changes cause the target to rip itself apart. In flight, torpedoes use a mass-increasing field, making them too massive for enemy kinetic barriers to repulse. This extra mass gives torpedoes very sluggish acceleration, making them easy prey for defensive Guardian weapons, so torpedoes have to be launched at very close range. Torpedoes are the main anti-ship weapon used by fighters. They are launched from point-blank range in ripple-fire waves reminiscent of the ancient Calliope rocket artillery launchers, thus their popular nickname Callies. By saturating defensive Guardian systems with multiple targets, at least a few will get through. A ship's General Area Defense Integration Anti-Spacecraft Network Guardian consists of anti-missile, anti-fighter laser turrets on the exterior hull. Because these are under computer control, the gunnery control officer needs to do little beyond turn the system on and designate targets as hostile. Since lasers move at light speed, they cannot be dodged by anything moving at non-relativistic speeds. Unless the beam is aimed poorly, it will always hit its target. In the early stages of a battle, the Guardian fire is 100% accurate. It is not 100% lethal, but it doesn't have to be. Damaged fighters must break off for repairs. Lasers are limited by diffraction. The beam spreads out, decreasing the energy density, measured in watts per meter squared, the weapon can place on a target. Any high-powered laser is a short-range weapon. Guardian networks have another limitation: heat. Weapons-grade lasers require cooldown time, during which heat is transferred to sinks or radiators. As lasers fire, heat builds up within them, reducing damage, range, and accuracy. Fighters attack in swarms. The first few will be hit by Guardian, but as the battle continues, the effects of laser overheat allow the attackers to press ever closer to the ship. Constant use will burn out a laser. Guardian lasers typically operate in infrared frequencies. Shorter frequencies would offer superior stopping power and range, but degradation of focal arrays and mirrors would make them expensive to maintain, and most people prefer mechanical reliability over bleeding-edge performance where lives are concerned. Salarians, however, use near-ultraviolet frequency lasers with 6 times the range, believing that having additional time to shoot down incoming missiles is more important. Lasers are not blocked by the kinetic barriers of capital ships. However, the range of lasers limits their use to rare knife fight range, ship-to-ship combat. In the absence of realistic terrain or equipment, military organisations will often make use of a combat simulator as a method of training soldiers for varied combat environments. Holographic projectors are used to create visual representations of opponents and obstacles. Kinetic barriers are then cast to prevent participants from passing through the obstacles and terrain. Kinetic barriers are also used to simulate weapon damage and shockwaves. However, while most trainers argue that pain is the best teacher, all government-sponsored combat simulators are required to make use of extensive safety protocols to prevent any serious, permanent damage to participants. Pinnacle Station is a Turian space station that has been retrofitted as a military training facility by the Council. Invitees participate in a series of simulated combat encounters and compete against other participants. When colonising a planet, corporations will often make use of prefabricated or prefab structures to quickly and easily deploy a base of operations. These residential structures feature full living quarters and a large solarium from which residents may observe the planet's surface. While most human colonies have the support of the Alliance military or some corporate-sponsored defence contractor, many civilian colonists choose to keep a small stock of armaments in their home. These weapons are a last resort, but are often critical to staving off a pirate attack until support arrives. After 20 years of manned research outposts and nearly a century of robotic exploration, the European Space Agency's Lowell City became the first permanent settlement on Mars in 2103. Within a decade, the United States and China had founded permanent settlements as well. The South Polar region of Prometheus Planum developed a Bermuda Triangle reputation. Satellites detected intermittent mass concentrations and magnetic field shifts. In 2148, prospectors working near Desiado crater discovered an underground complex, a Prothean observation post. The odd phenomena were generated by the operation and discharge of a Mass Effect core, struggling to function despite 50 millennia of neglect. Earth was electrified by the news. Humanity was unequivocally not alone. While courts battled over who owned the ruins, the international scientific community coordinated a massive effort to access, translate, and interpret the databanks recovered from the facility. The facility proved to be a biosciences observation post, built when Homo sapiens were first evolving on Earth. While the motives of the Protheans are not certain, translated records indicate that the facility was in regular communication with automated observation platforms in Earth orbit and on the lunar near side. The half-dozen Mass Effect spaceships found in the facility were presumably used for first-hand observation. Biotics manipulate Mass Effect fields using dozens of Element Zero nodules within their nervous systems that react to electric stimuli from the brain. Amplifiers allow biotics to synchronize the nodules so that they can form fields large enough and strong enough for practical use. Amplifiers can improve a specific discipline or talent. An implant is a surgically embedded interface port into which amps are plugged in. On humans, the implant is usually placed at the base of the skull for convenient access, though the user must be careful to keep it free of contaminants. Implant ports can fit a variety of amps, and there is a growing market for modifications and add-ons. The finest quality implants and amps are manufactured by Asari artisans, but the Alliance's L3 implants, first deployed in 2170, are a significant step forward. Biotic implants and amplifiers only provide the potential to create coherent Mass Effect fields. Whether biotics can actually do so is largely determined by their training. Biotics must develop conscious control over their nervous systems, sending specific electrical impulses to the Element Zero nodules embedded in their nerves. They are taught to use their implants and amps with biofeedback devices and physical mnemonics. Specific gestures or muscle movements fire the proper sequence of nerves to activate a certain skill. Conatix Industries pioneered biotic training with the Biotic Acclimation and Temperance Training Program. Although BAT did not achieve the desired results, many techniques taught are still used today. Many human think tanks are trying to develop some form of biotic super soldier. Most are benign efforts to create more flexible troops. Others, less publicly known, are unapologetic attempts to create Nietzsche's and Supermen. Real-time communication is possible thanks to networks of expensive mass relay convoys that can daisy-chain a transmission via lasers. Convoys are maintained in patterns built outwards from each mass relay. The buoys are little more than a cluster of primitive miniature mass relays. Each individual buoy is connected to a partner on another buoy in the network, forming a corridor of low-mass space. Tight beam communications lasers are piped through these tubes of FTL space, allowing virtually instantaneous connection to anywhere on the network. The networks connect across regions by communications lasers through the mass relays. With this system, the only communications delay is the light lag between the source or destination and the closest buoy. So long as all parties remain within half a light second, about 150,000 kilometers of buoys, seamless real-time communications are possible. Since buoys are maintained in all travelled areas, most enjoy unlimited instant communication. Ships only suffer communications lag when operating off established deep space routes, around uninhabited outer system gas giants and other unsettled areas. During wartime, convoy networks are the first target of attack. Once the network is severed, it can take anywhere from weeks to years to get a message out of a contested system. In systems where a buoy network has not yet been built or has been destroyed, rapid communication means ferrying information through high-speed courier ships and unmanned data drones. While convoys allow rapid transmission, there is a finite amount of bandwidth available. Given that trillions of people may be trying to pass a message through a given buoy at any one time, access to the network is parcelled out on priority tiers. The Citadel Council and the Spectres have absolute priority. If they are using all the bandwidth, everyone else must wait. Individual governments and their militaries enjoy the next highest tier. During wartime, civilian communication can suffer hours or even days of lag. Intelligence agencies study ping time through various systems to predict military build-ups. Below the governments and militaries, bandwidth priority is sold to the highest bidder. Media conglomerates, particularly headline news networks, purchase higher priority to provide their viewers with timely information. Corporations that require timely information and response capability, for example financial institutions and investment firms, also invest heavily in priority access. The funds acquired through sales of bandwidth are used to maintain and expand the communications infrastructure. While everyone with a computer has guaranteed free and unlimited access to the Galactic extranet, they are last in line for bandwidth and may have to wait for their requests to be processed. Bandwidth resale corporations use investment capital to purchase blocks of high-priority access made available by paid subscription. As the population of the galaxy increases and new worlds are settled, timely access for home users and frontier settlements with underdeveloped communications infrastructures is a growing problem. To ameliorate bandwidth issues, a sophisticated array of data caches and virtual intelligent search agent programs are available. When a user submits a query, it is first routed to the data cache on their colony or star system. At the cache, the user's search agent VI collates mountains of locally stored data to find the desired material. If the information is not available locally, the query is passed along to neighbouring systems and then outwards in an expanding network. VI search agents in those systems replicate the search. If the desired information is found, it is compressed into a burst file and queued for transmission to the source system. The burst is assigned a priority based on the number of queries for it. The greater the number of queries, the higher the priority. When a new solar system is first connected to the net, a selection of the most popular data is installed locally. Though storage hardware is cheap, the capacity required to hold all the data produced every day by trillions of people on hundreds of worlds is not trivial. It's not economical to store local copies of all the data available on obscure topics just in case. As colonies mature, older and less popular chunks of data filter into them as a result of queries and are placed in the local archive. Searches for obscure topics are increasingly likely to produce instant results as the archive grows. The standard credit was established by the Citadel's Unified Banking Act as the currency of interstellar trade. The credit has a managed floating exchange rate, calculated in real time by the central bank to maintain the average value of all participating currencies. Some regional currencies are worth more than a credit, and some less. Hard currency can be stolen or counterfeited, so electronic fund transfers are the norm. More importantly, physical transactions cannot be easily tracked, making them ideal for tax evasion or the purchase of illegal goods. When the Alliance joined the Citadel, its various national treasuries were linked into the credit network. A human with a bank account of Mexican pesos, Japanese yen, or Indian rupees can purchase any item priced in credits at fair market value. All economies that participate in the credit network are required to price items in both local currency and credits. The development of practical manufacturing omni-tools allows modern militaries a great deal of flexibility in equipment loadouts. A vast number of field modification kits, or upgrades, are available for common equipment such as weapons, armour, omni-tools, biotic amps, and even grenades. An upgrade kit typically consists of less than a dozen unique parts and an optical storage disk. When loaded into an omni-tool, the OSD provides all technical specifications required to manufacture the tools and additional parts necessary to install the upgrade onto another piece of equipment. Assembly is typically modular, and installation can be completed in less than a minute. Since omni-tools are designed to use common battlefield salvage materials such as plastics, ceramics and light metals, rendered into semi-molten omni-gel for quick use, it is quite possible for a trained soldier carrying upgrade kits to customise gear on the battlefield to fit the current tactical situation.